Welcome everybody to another episode of Vietnam Rising podcast. I'm very excited to be here today to cover another topic that is very interesting, and I'm sure that a lot of you, when you look into Vietnam, you will absolutely want to know more about it. So this topic, the topic we're gonna cover is startup community, startup funding, and especially venture capital, VC. As some of you might know, Vietnam is one of the hottest startup hubs in Southeast Asia as well as in the world. There are a few reasons for that. Number one, we have almost 100 million populations in Vietnam, in which there are more than 60% of us are in our prime spending years, which means we are in labor, we are working, we are making money, and we are spending money. Vietnam also has over 7 million mobile penetrations in Vietnam. And last but not least, we also have a very cost-efficient labor and with very high quality skill. For all of that reasons, that's why startup in Vietnam has been exploded. The amount of startup companies has opened in Vietnam has multiplied and grown exponentially, as well as a lot of international startups. They are starting to look into Vietnam as one of the potential market, or they are looking into Vietnam as to base or to outsource most of their work here. Today, I'm very excited to have a guest that join me to discuss and discover more the insights about the startup community in Vietnam. Please welcome Leo Pham. He is working at Access Ventures, a very insightful person about the startup community and venture capital in Vietnam. How are you, Lam?
I'm good. Happy to be here. So I guess first to start a bit about myself. So I'm a Vietnamese, born and raised. When I was 18, I left Vietnam for the US for school, obviously. And then later on, I worked for a few years in the US as a software engineer. Then about 3 years ago, I returned to Vietnam. First, obviously, to return home, which is my homeland, but also to look for new opportunities. So I was thinking there's two ways I could go about this. Keep being a software engineer, make a lot of money, or do something else, give back to the country, to people. And I was seeing that there was a rising trend of like young founders, young companies that are really starting out, but they don't really know what they want to do. These guys are oftentimes young engineers themselves, or a bit more senior engineer with a few years in the works, but they don't really know how to effectively run a company. So that's why I decided to jump ship to basically join the dark side, as you might say it, to join the investment side of startup. As first was as a trainer, academic program manager for a local accelerator program that trained Vietnamese founders, and later on joined a VC fund, a venture capital fund. Yeah.
I see. So back when you were in Boston, what was the moment where you make the decision of, okay, I need to go back to Vietnam?
Right. So I left the U.S. in 2016, but about a year before that, I visited home. And this is the first time I visited Vietnam after maybe 4 years of being away. So, and during the 4 years, I did a lot, right? So I went to school, went to Germany for exchange program, and I went back to the U.S. and worked as a software engineer for a few years. So I didn't really have a good sense of how much had changed in Vietnam at the time. So I went back. This is late 2015. Stayed for a month, and first impression is oh wow, man, a lot had changed. Because when I left Vietnam, it's 2009, 2010, right? Mind you, this is right around the corner of the global financial crisis. So it started in 2008, and then the impact started hitting all the way to 2009, 10. So the overall environment wasn't very good. People was losing faith. They didn't really have what am I gonna do with my life? And this was a common theme for a lot of young people, right? But in 2015, the economy was booming. There were more and more global franchise entering Vietnam. More and more young entrepreneur, grassroots, homegrown entrepreneurs is springing in the country. So 2015, I came back. I saw all that. And I have some friends here who was in the middle of starting new companies, or like they work for startup companies. So I learned a lot from them as well, like what's going on here, how much it changed, and what are the opportunities. And then after that, I came back to the US, and I was like, yeah, I need to get back to Vietnam, to be part of the rising wave. Took me about a year to settle my affairs in the US, sold my assets and all that. But eventually, in mid to late 2016, I slowly transitioned back to Vietnam. So first, like moving some of the stuff back here, started reconnected to old friends, families, and also obviously travel a bit. Went to Japan, Taiwan, Korea. Kind of like exploring the whole East Asian landscape, see what's out there as well. And then early 2017, officially settled back. So that was a story. It took about a year and a half, basically, to get back into it. Yeah.
Then when you come back, what is the first impressions of the community when you come back?
Well, it's obviously very early on, right? So my youth, I was in Boston, right? So it was a very vibrant community. It was a bunch of colleges all around, MIT, Harvard, all the best schools around. A lot of young talents, a lot of rising startup companies. And obviously because there's so many great institutions around, they spend a lot of money supporting local startup, and there's a lot of like VCs and entrepreneurial programs. Y Combinator started out in Boston, for example, before they moved out to Silicon Valley, and they are only one of the biggest startup builders in the world, right? So Boston had a lot. When I came back to Vietnam, there weren't that many ecosystem builders like that. There weren't that many VCs, venture capital funds. There weren't that many accelerator incubators. There weren't that many founders, even. There were a few successful founders, but they started in like 2005, 6, and by the time I turned, they already became like massive companies like Vina Game, VNG, Tiki, right? The young founders just starting out. So we basically were at the new wave of entrepreneurship in Vietnam when I came back. But that was a good time, right? Because I could effectively participate in the rising way, and then maybe added more value to these young founders and young companies.
Yeah. So you joined in Accelerators.
Yeah.
And what was your work there?
So again, I didn't have an investment or finance background. I wasn't an investment banker. I wasn't a financier. So obviously, I chose a more technology gear accelerator program to join. So it's called VIISA, or Visa for short. It was co-founded by FPT and Dragon Capital. Dragon being one of the largest like asset manager PE firm in the country, private equity firm in the country. So they were just looking for young founders, maybe first time, second time founders with basically we're just starting out, 3-6 months, idea stage, or like a bit like prototype, very first product stage kind of company, and then they put in some a little money and a lot of support, mostly coming from these two large corporations, right? So I was a program manager there, and most of my work surrounding building out training program for founders, because again, these are very young founders, first time, maybe second time after they failed the first one in a very short time. So that was the basic profile for these guys. So they might know what they're doing in their own sector, but like if there's an engineer, he might be a very good engineer, right? But running a company doesn't just surround building product, like doing engineering work all the time. You have to also be concerned with financial numbers, accounting standards, all these things. So these guys don't know any of that. So our work, me and my colleagues, my co-workers, we spend more of the time building our training programs. It's like training hamsters, training wheels for these guys, and also like building out a connection ecosystem. Because again, startups at the end of the day are still companies. They still need a meaningful relationship with other partners, other mostly large corporations who have a lot of resources to support these young startups. So we go out there, we talk to these guys. It's like, hey, look, I have this company in my program in our fund. They're very, very early on. They're building this thing. Can you please take a look at it and see if it, might be useful for your companies or your fund? So a lot of these guys end up doing that, and they look at it and it's like, oh well, this tool is nice. We can use it. So that's how we start getting the first clients for these guys as well. Sorry. Yeah. So that was an example of what we did.
So basically, you help startup to build connections,
Yep.
raise fund, and also train them to have skill set and basically business management skill set in general, because a lot of them are coming from like specialist background, like technology or certain area of it,
Yep.
but they never been an owner, or they are just first time owner, and they are not very experienced in that whole scene.
Yeah, pretty much.
I see. Then, what was the most memorable like project or company that you work with in Visa?
Yeah, so there's this company called Yourbox, URBOX. So these guys do a digital platform, digital loyalty vouchers for other companies. So I first met them, I think they were 6 months old. It's like 3 guys, all very, very experienced people. So the main founder, he worked at VP Bank for a long time, right? He was running the credit card programs. Another guy was a lecturer at the National Economic University in Hanoi. And the third guy, the youngest guy, who's also the CEO in charge, he was ex-marketing at Grab. He worked at, let's say, Citibank or VP Bank, one of those banks. So again, this is a very young team. They barely started out. They talked to a few funds. Everyone was saying that like, hey, you're too early. Go find someone else who can help you. So I met the CEO, the youngest guy, like a mixer. I was a speaker. He was one of the people there. So after I finished my speech, he came to me and like, hey, I heard about you guys from this fund, and then I'd love to talk to you more about investment. And so we started talking more and more and more. About two months later, I brought the company up to our investment committee, and it's like, say, look, we need to invest in these guys. And that's just how it is. I love these guys. We gotta do this. Another 2 weeks of negotiation. This is all very technical, right? So you have to every deal that you do in the venture capital fund or a fund in general, you have an investment committee comprised of a few people who approve the deals. So I was the deal leader basically, and just like protecting the deal, go up to the investment committee and like, hey, look, we need to invest. So that was the technicality. But about 2 weeks later, we invested, and shortly after they finished the program, they raised funds from Vina Capital Ventures, and now they are basically the biggest digital loyalty platform in the country. They got like 200-300 merchants, a couple hundred clients, brands using their platform. Coffee house, Grab, all the household brand names you can think of, they're all there. So I'm really proud of that. I met them when they was barely starting out. I pushed my way through to everyone to defend the deal, and basically help them as much as I could, connecting them with everyone I know, like some of the biggest banks like ACB, Asia Commercial Banks, and even introducing them to investors. So that was one of my proudest moments when they raised from Vina Capital Ventures.
Wow, that's very exciting.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the unique thing about that team, or maybe the teams or the projects that you decided to invest in? And what was the unique point of that from that team or those team that makes you okay, these are the guys that we have to work with?
Right. So again, in investment, there's always risk. There's a certain amount of risk that any investor willing to take. For early stage companies like this, the risk was a lot, because again, they don't have anything yet, or they have a little traction. They have a prototyping product that is barely working. So you have to look at the rest of the asset that a team has. And in the case of these early stage company, the biggest asset will be the founders, the team. So I had a luxury of talking to the three co-founders of this company very early on, all three of them. And this go back a lot to gut feeling as well, and how you read people. So my gut feeling told me that these guys are great and they can do something big. Maybe even not with this project, because this is a pretty tough thing to tackle, but it's worth an investment. Someone needs to believe in these guys. So I basically made a bet that I'm gonna work with these guys. I'm gonna try to defend them. I'm gonna help them raise, so they can succeed. It's basically a bet. It's really hard to tell if something was gonna succeed or not, especially in the technology space where you never know.
Mm-hmm. So for startup, then, my question would be, for Vietnam startup, and from what you've seen, are they mostly focusing just for Vietnam market, or are they also looking into like regional or like global market as well?
Well, again, a lot of these founders, they are starting from Vietnam. So securing your home base, your home market would be priority number one. I would say that 9 out of 10 founders I met, they start with Vietnam. Because again, Vietnam is a big market, 100 million people.
But don't you think they just focus in Vietnam, that they maybe built a product that only fit for Vietnam, but not the entire world?
Again, it really depends on the industry. So for example, for e-commerce, you can build a cross-border e-commerce platform like Flair, but you're missing the opportunity that Vietnam have to offer, right? Because even right now, e-commerce in Vietnam is like maybe 10%. 9% is still physical retail. There's a huge, frontier beyond what is already there. But obviously for financial services as well, like fintech, there's huge opportunities out there. Maybe not in payment because that's already pretty crowded, but like in lending, crowdfunding, blockchain, all that. There's a lot of things out there that you can do in Vietnam. But obviously you're gonna do something like e-commerce enabler, right? So let's say you are a tech enabler for e-commerce platforms. You don't want to just work in Vietnam. There's only maybe 5 players in Vietnam. That's it. You want to look at beyond the borders of Vietnam. You want to work with like MNC, multinational brands, or like micro brands, or like designer labor from all over the region. That's how you can best leverage your technology platforms. So again, it really depends on the industry you're operating in. It's really on your business model as well. Is it going to be B2B? Is it going to be B2C? Is it going to be C2C? So B2B is business to business, and B2C is business to consumer, and obviously C2C is consumer to consumer, right? So it depends on your model. You have to choose your first market and choose it well. You might choose the wrong market, and that won't be really bad. But you choose the right market, but you don't have a right execution for it, and it's still going to fail. So again, that's really depend on the industry that you're operating in and how you operate.
How about startup that coming from overseas to Vietnam? Like, do you think that if they apply a standard models from overseas to Vietnam, would that work for Vietnam market?
Well, I don't think so. Generally, we've seen that there's been numerous cases where a global regional companies startup try to expand to Vietnam. The most obvious case being Grab and Uber and Grab, right? So Uber is a global player. They had a lot of advantage. They had a lot of learning. They had lessons, but they still fail in China and then in South Asia. Whereas Grab, being a regional player, they had a much higher flexibility and much higher localization level, meaning that they can customize market by market by market. So Grab Indonesia is totally different, is operating in a different way compared to Grab in Vietnam, very different than Grab in Thailand. obviously the key services are the same, meaning like the norms of the company, the core values of the company are the same, but operational,
Like
operation,
policies in
yeah,
general.
policy, internal regulations, all that. It had to be subjected to the country manager, country head, and that's how they was able to succeed in Vietnam. They customized fairly well for the local market, and because and again, so when you have similarly excellent execution is the matter of who had the most money. And that's how Grab been so successful in Vietnam to beat out everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. Like even in e-commerce, right? You see Lazada have Lazada or Tiki and others e-commerce platform. They are in Vietnam, but they still the penetrations of e-commerce is very like still very small.
Yep.
Reason is it's just mostly focused in like super city like Ho Chi Minh or Hanoi, but or like Da Nang or like others, but and Con Tum too maybe. But then the rest of the countries are still very brick and mortar business, and I also see that there are startup that are making advantage of it because they understand that Vietnam is a very unique market that you can just apply a standard model to it. So they become a suppliers or like a vendor to those huge startup and help them to localize their service and products to Vietnam.
Yeah, so that's what I meant earlier. Right? Vietnam is a huge market. There's a lot to do here, and if you run, say, a delivery company, you don't have to just go out and build your own delivery system. You can do like franchise system. Like for example, several different delivery companies started doing like what the franchise model when they go to like a localized, say a mom and pop store, and they're like, hey, look, I want to turn you into a postal office for us. So really they spend some money. These guys receive like a POS machine and then all these tools they need to run basically a simple postal service, and that's how you scale very quickly. I can never see like DHL or like FedEx do that. They have certain standard they have to comply, but these smaller delivery companies, they don't care. They just need a basic minimum so that they can get the goods delivered to the right place at the right time to the right people. That's it. Even companies like DHL, right? They work with these smaller delivery companies because again, their coverage network is not big enough. And they want to increase that coverage network. They have to go in there, basically rebuilding delivery, like infrastructure from the ground up. Basically working with these smaller vendors. It might affect their performance a little bit, but the return on investment is much easier to optimize.
Absolutely. I also think one of the very unique thing about Vietnam market is that a lot of people, or I say like most people, have a very entrepreneurial spirit, right? So it's very common for you to have a 9 to 5 job, and then if you and have a side hustle or something. It's either can be you can selling something online, or it's either could be you are running a cafe, a restaurant, or something for a family business, or you may be saving money to start on your own. So I think that is one of the very unique thing about Vietnam market is that everybody is so entrepreneurship. So it's the competition is super high because everybody think and try to be creative in how to enter different market. And but yeah, it's create a very high like a high competitions like market, but it also affects the turnover rate of labor, right? Because a lot of employees you able to recruit, they will work and they will start working with you, and then on the side they still try to focus to build their own business instead of just work for the company and stay there. So do you think that is that going to be a challenge, or is that an opportunity for Vietnam?
I think it's going to be an opportunity because again, you think about labor efficiency, right? For like low skilled jobs, the delivery guys and all that, you don't need a lot of training, so they can do 2-3 different jobs at once. Like Access Venture, right? We recently invested into a company called Vietcall. Basically, it's a blue collar HR on demand platform. Say you are a Tiki, you need to find a 10 delivery guy for this month. Go on Vietcall, the HR manager go on Vietcall and then just like submit the JD. The JD get pushed out to like 1,000 different candidates on big call platform, and then they receive it, they apply for it by one click, and then done. So they get us, and then maybe they get an interview with a HR manager or something like that, and they get the job right away. And the good thing about these low skill jobs, you need a lot of training. You can do a lot. For office workers and all that, obviously, they can only do a lot in one day. You don't want to force them to do like 12, 14 different hours sitting in desk in front of a computer. That's counterintuitive. But then these guys want to go out, work some more, get some money after work, just so they can earn some money. That's helpful as well, because with more money they can buy more, they can purchase more, and help with CPI, help with the macroeconomics as well overall. And so I don't think and then later on when these guys are given enough to the company they work at, they go out there and start a new company. That's also good. More taxpayers, more tax money collected for the government, more jobs created, and all that. So I think overall it's a good thing, and I think companies, they shouldn't feel that threatened by, startups projects, or like by employees leaving to do a startup, because again, this is good. These guys have given all they got for the companies, and now they leaving to start something new. That's always good, unless they start a competing business. I don't think that's good, but I don't see that happening a lot. I think Vietnamese people, we have a high level of morality,
work ethic.
Yeah, not just work ethic, also like respect, for your peers. You used to work for the company, you saw this company not doing something right, like a pain point or niche market that your own company is not doing very well, and you go out and you start that. There's no competition, right?
Well, it's indirect, but still, because you improve from what you learned from that previous employer, and then you start your own business because you see that you can solve a problem for a customer.
Yeah, and again, that's how Big Call started, right? Both the guys who started Big Call was ex-Tiki. They saw the HR process in Tiki was a nightmare, so they left and they started that, and the founder of Tiki invested in that company.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's one example, right? So good founders always enable more founders, and that's what I've been seeing a lot, like VNG, Tiki, Lazada. A lot of the employees of those companies ended up being founders themselves. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. So for those founders who are thinking of like starting a job, or they are already starting it, then what is the one thing that they should know about startup funding?
It's not easy to get funding in Vietnam. I have to say that up front right now. And the reason is because, you look at startup funding, there's a few stages, right? There's a friends and family stage where, basically you get money from your friends and families.
And fools.
Yeah, something like that. And then maybe angel investors or individual wealthy people who have some money and they want to invest into small project with, that hopefully get returns later. And then comes institutional investors, which breaks down into incubator, accelerator, venture capital funds, and then later on private equity funds, and post IPO capital market funds. So every step there are funding, but in Vietnam right now, I think there's a gap. So you get some angel money, like friends, family, and angel investors, and then maybe some seed funding like the very first round funding, right? But then after that, the funding get a bit less and less and less. So it's hard, and that's because I think our ecosystem hasn't gotten to a point where there's enough like major deals. For example, the biggest deal ever recorded in financial technology in Vietnam is like VNPay, and that was SoftBank. But that took about 7 years, like 8 years into fintech start in Vietnam to get to that point. And only recently the Momo VNPay, right? And another thing is I think because startup becoming such a hype in Vietnam, everyone is jumping in. It's like, oh, I'm doing this. It's a startup. I'm running a coffee shop. It's a startup. It is a startup, but it's not the kind of startup that VCs like venture capital fund would invest in. We generally like fast scaling, fast growing, highly scalable models, and a lot of those models are often technology. So you're running, you know, like a coffee chain. There's a high chance that a lot of funds might pass on you because, you know, it's not fast scaling, at least in our consideration. However, you're running like a software service company, building, say, a better CRM for kitchens, for like restaurant. And yeah, that would be something that we're interested in hearing more. So how are you going to do it? What are you doing? How you get the customer to sign up? So that sort of thing. And
what are the size deals that you guys looking at right now?
So for Visa, I was looking at, like, again, like I said, very early on, right? Like a pre-idea or like idea stage or pre-prototype stage, right? So like $300,000-$600,000 worth, like, in valuation. So that would be what? Roughly
10K?
15 billion VND.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but then for Access Venture, because it's a regional fund, it's a much bigger fund. We operate in South Asia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, the three main market, and then Korea as well. So we look for deals ranging from $500,000 all the way to at least 1 or 2 million. And usually these comes in not just one round funding, could be multiple round fundings. You know, we invest in you once, and then you're doing well, and then you raise a new funding round. We have the option to invest again, and we would usually. So that's the kind of company that we look for.
Yeah. And right now in VCs, there are more VCs fund that's been opening, right? I've seen a lot of reports about more funds opening, like more size deal or more bigger fund that's starting and like vouch to invest in Vietnam.
Yeah, well, so there are two types of VCs in Vietnam. There's the local ones, meaning the Vietnam focused one. So like Founder Star Vietnam was one of the earliest Vietnam focused fund. Or ESP Capital, started by a couple successful entrepreneurs. Visa could be considered a VC fund, albeit a more hybrid model. But then there's also the regional funds. So like ourselves, for example, we are not based in Vietnam, but I'm here. You know, I'm basically the guy on the ground. You know, supporting, like, get deals, execute deals, and also like working with founders to help the company grow, that sort of thing. And then other funds, other Korean fund like Next Strands, or Singaporean fund like Cocoon Capital. It's like that's like an angel seed funding, and or like largest fund like Open Space Ventures, which invested in Topica. You know, one of the major deals that they did.
The $50 million deal.
Yeah, something like that. So and then there are funds that have local people but still consider themselves a regional fund, like Patama Capital, and also obviously, you know, there are more, you know, like traditional investors who are now reinventing themselves. They're opening new funds that basically focus on just venture capital funding. So like Vina Capital was an example, right? They've been traditionally an asset management, private equity, post IPO, you know, all sort of sector, but venture capital. So now they open a new Vina Capital venture fund that just invests in startup.
I see.
There's that kind of as well.
I see. Last year, 2019, I would consider it's not a very bright year of startup. We have a few failed unicorn, like for example Uber with their failed IPO, or WeWork, that basically they had to postpone their IPO like indefinitely. And then like in Vietnam, there's also like funded companies that went bankrupt, or founder and investor go to legal battles, mostly because the founders unable to manage the fund that they got. Do you think that is gonna change in VC? Is that gonna affect the VC's industry in the future because of all these incidents?
No, I mean I think it's actually could be a good thing for the ecosystem, because again, you look at Uber and Lyft, and then WeWork, all these, you know, like botch IPOs, or like, you know, like underperforming IPOs, right? You know, that's the side of the public market is saying that, look, whatever model you're using to evaluate companies before the IPO stage, that didn't work. Like for example, WeWork went to 9 round fundings just from SoftBank, and the valuation went crazy. So the public market is not gonna take that. So that's what I mean. That's a sign saying that there's something fundamentally wrong with the way we as VC investors are evaluating these startups. So we need to change. And also for the companies, that's also a wake up call that look, you need to start looking at the fundamentals. So let's say you're running a costly business. You need to look at the fundamentals, like, okay, how do you optimize your burn rate, your spendings, and also how to maximize your revenue, your profit. And also, so I think that's actually a good thing. Your company have to before they even think about, like, look, I'm going to change the futures, and this is what all these startups saying. I'm going to be Uber or whatever, or WeWork, whatever. You got to run a successful business first, because at the end of the day, that's what startups are. They are fundamentally fast-growing, highly scalable businesses, but it's still businesses, and the whole scale at all costs is no longer going to fly. So I think that's a good wake-up call for both VCs and startups to be more mindful of the fundamentals, like metrics, burn rate, like ROI, average revenue per users, all these things. Just not chasing after fake metrics and fake progresses. Yeah.
So investor, they have to be more mindful about the projects that they gonna put in, and what's the visual, and then and then for startup founders, they need to look at like how are they gonna like able to really make use of the profit. Are their business really scalable or really like work, or is it just like is yes, so that they don't have really conflict between the interest between of the business and investor, right? So there has been a case that investor take over the company because the founder has unable to use the resource very well.
Well, so I mean, and again, this is, I get it, right? So you're a founder, you basically give birth to this project, but it has to be a point when you realize that you're no longer fit to run this company. There's been a few cases in Vietnam where the CEO stepped out, the founder slash CEO have to step out, and then someone else became CEO. But that's not always a bad thing. Again, I mean, you might have given birth to this project, you might have given birth to this company, you might have run it to where it is right now, but there always have to be a point of pivot where you're like, look, I'm no longer fit to be the leaders of this organization, leader of this company, to take it to the next level. I should step back, serve as a different role. And that's exactly what happened with Starbucks, right? The Howard Schultz was, he was the CEO for a long time, but then he decided like one day that, okay, I need to step back, and then he became the chairman of the company, and then let his CFO become a CEO. And then recently there's other company that also had reshuffling their
Alibaba or Google.
Yeah, in Vietnam that was Topica, right? They just recently changed the CEO right after Lunar New Year, right before Lunar New Year. So that was an example of, how different period need different leaders. And as founders, you should always be prepared that one day you become irrelevant in your role, and you need to change. You need to change yourself as the company needs to change.
Oh, very insightful. Thank you. Is there any? So right now, what size? What stage of startup that Access Venture is looking at?
So I said before, there's multiple stages for startup, right? So we at institutional investors would be looking at the seed to Series A, meaning like could be the very first round of funding for the company, first institutional round funding for the companies. So at least like $500,000, or Series A, I mean, we could put in like $1-2 million, and with other investors. So the company in Series A, they would have to have quite a bit of traction, meaning they have been to operate for after how many months, and then have how many users, how many customers, how much revenue, what's your like unit economics, like the retention rate and all that. So we look at all that. So I think for the Series A company, we spend quite a bit more time looking at these companies, and also our partners are very hands-on. So they also visit Vietnam, visit South Asia a lot. They're in Korea and Hong Kong, but they fly in every month just to talk to these founders themselves, and also like get a better judge of the founders. And also we, as myself included, as the investment team, would all together look at the deals, talk to the founders, and also like interview them, look at their books, look at the financials, look at their like numbers in general to determine whether this could be a worthwhile investment or not. So that's how we work. And so far we have, I think, six companies in Vietnam. One exited. So you and then people might know about this. It's Mocha. So it's GrabPay by Mocha. So before it was a separate wallet, and then Grab acquired it, I think, about a little over a year ago, and incorporated.
So a little explanation for the audience. Basically, Grab, they have a financial wallet, right?
Yeah, GrabPay.
GrabPay.
Yeah.
But in Vietnam, because they cannot operate independently as GrabPay, therefore they acquired Mocha to be their.
So that was our first investment in Vietnam, and that was also the fun first exit. Exit meaning that we got our money back and some, get some profit back. So that was a very proud moment for the team. For me as well, again, our older market that we invested in, Vietnam, got the first exit, so great, yay. But yeah, we have quite a number of companies, all are doing well. So we have our latest company that raised a new round was Accelerators, bus ticketing company. They're probably the number one in the market at the moment. And they raised significant amount of money from a few Korean investors, and also regional strategics. So hopefully with that we can grow even more. And again, my role in Vietnam is not just to represent the fund, but also to looking for new deals, and support existing companies that we invested, our portfolio companies in any way that we can, to help them achieve higher targets, or hopefully one day get acquired by someone bigger, like Mocha, or the best would be IPO, but that's a far-fetched target. So try to be optimistic.
Yeah. So because the startup community is quite new, so do you see that the process to make a deal here, is it longer, or is shorter than compared to other ecosystem?
Definitely a bit longer. And there are many reasons for that. So one of the reasons is like the legal structure, right? So a lot of companies are based in Vietnam, meaning for investors have to put the money into Vietnam as like FDI investment.
That's quite scary.
Oh, it's not as much scary as this is time consuming. And also when you take the money out, you have to pay 20% capital gain tax, which is a lot. you in considering you invest a couple $100,000, you maybe get by a couple million, you have to pay 20% of that, like 1/5 of your own money.
Yeah.
And this is on profit, not on revenue, meaning that how much you put
how much
in,
you make
how much you make on the difference. When you put the money in, you take the money out, and you pay additional 20% on that. So that's quite scary for a lot of investors. But then there's also other company that in Vietnam, but they incorporate in Singapore, and that might sound easy, but you actually get into it. There's a lot of issues with the structure, legal structure, and the frameworks that you use to incorporate these companies that you have to be really mindful of. So that's why a deal can take anywhere from the fastest deal that we ever done, probably like 1 month, could take up to 6 months, easy, because of the issues.
And you mentioned earlier that the legal framework for VCs now there's been no framework for it?
Yeah, so last year the Vietnamese government came up with a new decree, basically stating, basically defining what is a venture capital fund that operate in Vietnam. So I know at least two organizations that signed up for the license to be a VC in Vietnam. But to be honest, the majority of VCs I know, they still, either set up in Singapore or somewhere else, because it's just make it easier for them. Because again, as I said before, a lot of startups in Vietnam are opting still
in Singapore
to be in Singapore. You have Vietnam fund. You have to get a overseas investment license again. That also costs money and time. So in the spirit of, fail fast and fail often. Or I do fast and break thing. A lot of VC opt to create like an entity in Singapore and use that as an investment vehicle.
Yeah, and then like sometimes even VC or investor would make the business to register an entity in Singapore to receive the fund instead of
a lot of
putting it
foreign
here.
funds do that. We don't make it a requirement, but a lot of other people do that because again, they make it easier for them. They do hundreds of deals per year. The least people do is like at least dozens of deals. We don't have the capacity or the time to, figure out all the legal landscape in Vietnam. Like, this is where I can invest, where I cannot invest, and we rely a lot on local fund partners or the startup themselves. It's like, hey, tell us what to do. Obviously for us, I'm here, so at least I can be more useful on that front. But a lot of foreign funds, they don't have local people, and they don't have the luxury of fighting out. So they go with what they know best, which is, opt for the Singaporean entity or like the Hong Kong entity or somewhere easier.
Wow, I think I just have a epiphany of a startup idea of becoming a legal consulting team or like an outsourced legal consulting team for VCs and startup in Vietnam just to do do projects together.
Wow. There are people doing that, absolutely. I know of a few guys who actually do that for a living. They do consulting works for startup and VCs to connect each other and also like sort out all the legal struggles. There's a lot of that, but I think it's going to change. The government, they are pretty pragmatic. Like as long as the local company paying taxes and all that, they don't care.
Yeah, I think, and then also startup is becoming one of the forefront for the country development, right? Not only in like the capital, like Vietnam in general, but each province and each city, like main city, they will actually try to build their own startup program, startup incubators, startup accelerators to help to nurture the founders and the projects within the locations, the base. And I think that's very promising, and it's also gonna be helpful and it will give protections for investors to starting to invest more money in Vietnam because there's now Leo framework and there's like their guidance and then rules or legal conflict, right? So I remember that you wrote a few articles about VC and fintech, right? So if the audience, if you want to check out on that, so Long he wrote a few Medium articles about Vietnam startup like scenes. I think it's very interesting. It's very well round about the landscape and what's been happening right now. So he's been able to cover VC. He's been able to cover about fintech, even about like startup scene in general. So if you want to check out that, then where can they check out those articles on?
So again, I have my LinkedIn account, which I put all my contacts there. And also my work email is leo@accessvc.co. So you can reach me on those fronts and find more about what I've been written, what I've been sharing my thoughts and updates. Obviously I do share both personal, updates, thoughts, and also like fun updates, like who we invested in and all that. So please do check it out. I'm also fairly reachable on LinkedIn. Just don't like send me a friend request and don't say anything. Again, I think that's the number one thing that people make a mistake on, is that you are adding someone, I'll say on a social network like LinkedIn. At least they put in a message like, hey, who am I? What am I doing? Why do I want to connect with you?
Well, maybe they're just very accustomed to Facebook, Instagram, where there's no explanation need, right?
Yeah. So I think that's why I like to see someone add me, like at least say who you are. Why are you here? Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So his email again is leo@accessvc.co. It's leo@accessvc.co. Okay, I have a few more questions. So If you so you wrote a lot about recapping the scenes. So how about forecasting? Where do you see like VC or startup like ecosystem in Vietnam gonna growth in the next few years?
Well, it's definitely gonna go for the better. More homegrown VC fund, meaning started on and operated by local people. Could be raising from local wealthy individual as well, or raising from abroad. Um, and also more foreign VCs gonna come in. By coming in, I'm meaning that they're gonna try to set up a local office or recruit local people. I know at least a dozen foreign fund with local existence, for example, right? Like meaning local people either work out of Singapore, Hong Kong, or Korea, or they work here. Such is my case. So it's just gonna keep growing, attracting more attention, more interest from the regional VC community. And also the visual PE community as well, the regional PE community as well, because again, PE would also like to come in to invest into like late stage companies. With like Topica was an example, right? So that's always a good thing, and it's just gonna keep growing.
And what is the one thing that you would share or you think that someone in VC industry that is looking into Vietnam and they should know about it?
They should come to Vietnam first. Like, take a look at the market yourself. That's always the easiest way to get to know a new market. Don't just read stuff. All of them just like listen to stuff. See it, hear it, feel it, experience it with your own body, your own eyes, your own ears, your own visuals. That would be my best advice for any venture capitalist, any investor want to get into the country.
Wow, great, awesome. Thank you for sharing a lot of insight for us today. So yes, so Lom and I we know each other for a few years already. I think I met him like maybe a year after he came back to Vietnam, and he was working in Visa. So we would call in our crew friends is that someone's very reliable and then have a very resourceful. So whenever there's informations in startup that we need to know more because we all in the startup community and we want to know more information about it, and we would reach out to Lom just to understand more and or maybe just to check if that source information that we got is reliable or not. So Lom is definitely someone that you would want to connect if you want to know about Vietnam market as well as VC in Vietnam. So reach out to him again at leo@accessvc.co. That is LEO at ACCESSVC.co. And again, thank you, Long, for joining with me today. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Vietnam Rising.
All right, thanks guys. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Xong rồi đúng không?